2. Let me have my phone. Do not disturb.
Yeah, you just fix that YouTube is live.
How does the lighting look?
The hand's blocking YouTube channel.
Oh, my bad.
It's all right.
The lighting look? How does it look?
No. Welcome. We're getting ready for another episode of Above Average Black Men. That we're setting up our YouTube. And we're live on Facebook.
You don't want to see?
So, just put it on Facebook. I was just up on the floor. So welcome to another episode of Above Average Black Men. Yours truly, Chris Bender Sr.
Devin Pender here to remind us to like, follow, subscribe, share, comment, and we're here to inspire and uplift the community. That's the most important part. That is our goal for this whole thing.
And we're missing Chris Jr., who will be here shortly.
Yeah,
But we're going to get into this and start the conversation. So the question or the conversation is about community, the sense of community. Has it changed? And why has it changed? And where is it going? And I think this ties into what we were talking about last week, about politics and stuff. So I don't know if you have some thoughts you want to share on the community thing, and then we'll jump right in.
So I would say, at least from my point of view, when I hear like a community, of course, I had the stories that, I hear from you and like mom, like you guys were growing up, how like, there's a real sense of people looking out for each other. If, your parents were around, there were neighbors there or, people across the street, could have been like my grandpa could have had a best friend and he was always looking out. It seems like that sort of thing, like even from my own experience, like Mr. Dana, if we were playing in the neighborhood, like once I heard the whistle, I knew the McCrules had to go in, but I knew we had to be a little like behind them, It's just like a real sense of looking out. He was always there to, if you couldn't take me to school, he was taking me to school, that kind of thing. So when I hear community, I just think of things like that, just being there for one another, looking out. There's something going on, just being prepared and active in each other's lives where you can count on someone. So that's what I hear that's what I think when I hear community. But I see you got a definition there.
Yeah, so I think it's important that we got to share Webster's definition. You know I am, man. So Webster defines community as a group of people with a common characteristic or interest living together within a large society. For example, it could be a community of retired people, a Masonic community, it could be a church community. So community is defined as a lot of different things. So bring it into terms that I think is applicable to what we're talking about. I think community is something that's taught. I think, and it's taught, and once it becomes a part of your DNA, it travels with you. So it could be work. Your work can be a community. It could be you're on a team. That team could be a community. I think we got so caught up in community being defined as buildings and not the people. A community can be a church. But I think if it's taught, you take it with you. I think because it's not being taught, and we're seeing generations being raised in in individualism, that is no longer community. It's always about me. And the reason why I say it ties into a lot of topics we talk about, because I think that's why a lot of relationships don't make it, because it's about me. It's about I. No sense of community, and somebody's probably saying, what does that do to relationship? Because you have to come together, and families have to come together. And that forms a community. And it doesn't mean you agree on everything, but you need to be like-minded in some things. The common goal could be my daughter loves my son-in-law, my son-in-law loves my daughter. That could be a common goal. Common characteristics. We all, we believe in God. It doesn't mean we got to all go to church every Sunday or, but we have that common characteristic. And I think the sense of community has changed drastically in the cities, man. And I think it's reflected in our politics. Politics used to be designed to bring people together, you know, um, with a common cause, and that's no longer the thing. You got Republican versus Democrats versus Libertarian versus I don't cares, and everybody looks out for themselves. So I think community has become distorted, and I think it's reflected in every area of life, man. I mean, if you look at marriages, you see the kind of people getting married. You see the divorce rate is going up. If you look at where our schools are, a lot of our kids are not being taught to take care of school. They're not being taught to look out for each other. They're taught to look out for number one. So they literally throw stuff. We all know what's happening in our environment. The gun violence and other stuff that's going on. So I think it's something that has to be taught, but it also takes courage to be a part of a community. Because when you are a part of a community, it's no longer just about you.
So let me add, especially from you growing up, from the part of North Philadelphia, what would that community look like growing up for you versus nowadays?
Well, it was different. It was different because when I grew up, people laugh when I say this, but there was a certain level of respect in our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't all best friends, but you had a certain level of respect of people in the neighborhood. It was a community because I couldn't go around the corner and somebody didn't know my dad. And would not hesitate to correct me, then tell my dad. It was a sense of community because if I was somewhere in at Tommy's house, or run around Fred's house or Kevin Bucket's house or Keith Stone's house, if something happened, I could run in that house and be safe. And I knew I was protected. Or down the park, I could listen names, and I have to worry about it. It was a sense of community because, we had friendships within the neighborhood. We could play sports and go at it like cats and dogs. But, when people came from outside the neighborhood, we banded together. So it was different. We looked out for each other's moms. I wasn't going to see somebody's mom struggling and just let it go. Somebody would see your mom walking down the street, they would carry the bags. It was a sense of community. It wasn't perfect, and I don't want to paint that picture, but we had a sense of community. I've been on teams that were a community, man, and we stuck together. We stuck together, man. We were on one accord, man. We didn't agree on everything, but we wanted to win.
Yeah.
And we looked out for each other.
So let me ask you this: do you think there's a sense of, well, we can only speak about Philadelphia. Yeah. That's where we're at. Do you think there's still a sense of community there now?
Well, no, I'm not going to say it's totally gone because I don't know, but I think you can speak larger than Philadelphia because you see the news.
True.
You see it, and when you meet people from different cities, the attitudes, the way it is. So I don't think it's just Philadelphia. I think it's magnified because it's Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But if Chris would say he would love this, but I also think if you pay attention to social media, you would see that people don't talk like a sense of community anymore. It's about me. People don't always look out for people. People get robbed in broad daylight and nobody sees anything. A truck back up and empty somebody's house out and nobody sees anything. Everybody has ring cameras, and so it's a little different. But I think those days of looking out for people, kids, are different too. And there's reasons behind that because you got to be careful because certain parents may react differently. But I just think the overall thing where communities built relationships with police officers. In high school we had a police officer. Moose was the police officer in the school. So we had a relationship with him. Wasn't perfect, but he was. When I was in Strawberry Mansion junior high at the time, there was a police officer assigned to the school. So, you built a relationship with him. You got to know him. He got to know you. Now it's more us versus them. So it's different. And I think it's different. And you see it being reflected in a generation of kids. You walk into a school, if you're in, I just started running after school program in Pennell. I'm not going to shout out to Pennell. To do with all the schools. Was Conwell when I was with All Stars. So you have schools who have that leadership and it's a community.
Yeah.
When I was in Wright, not Wright, excuse me, I was in Kelly with Principal Crystal Edwards. It was a community, but that came from leadership. It came from at Pennell, Lofton. It came from Green at Conwell. It came from Edwards at Kelly. And it was a sense of community. They did stuff. The teachers did stuff together. You know, the teachers were invested in the kids. They looked out for each other. The school was almost like a safe haven, but regardless of what was going on in the community, you know, outside in the outer community where they were from. So it was a community. You know, it was a mutual respect. They weren't all singing kumbaya. They didn't all get along with everything, but it was a community that says that they had similar characteristics, they had similar interests. And to me, the main thing was they had a general respect for each other. I think that's one of the things you see in politics, how people been in politics for years with other people, man. And you know, now all of a sudden they're enemies.
Well, let me ask you, what factors kind of, you know, help destroy, you know, the community aspect? What factors went into it specifically? You know, I know one thing, like I really agree with the lack of leadership. I feel like was definitely a big factor.
Again, Chris is not here. He's coming in, so I'm gonna beat him to the punch. I think it's done on purpose. I do. I think it's done on purpose because the quickest way to destroy, monopolize anybody, control them is divide them up. You know, and for instance, we were talking about politics last week. Mm-hmm. You got a sense of community. So if you got, you know, 12 square blocks, I'm just as an example, and they all decide who they're going to vote for, that's power. But if I take those 12 square blocks and put them against each other, they're never really going to have a voice that means anything. Yeah. So I think that was allowed to happen. I think if you look at our schools, just look what's happening in our schools. Our schools are falling apart, man. You know, many of them don't have air conditioning. Many of them got shoddy internet. You know, teachers are underpaid. You know, so it's hard to maintain that sense of community because it just carries over from a kid who comes from a home where poverty reigns. He's already lacking. In a community, he maybe can't go far because of the drugs was up from the neighborhood. So he's already growing up disconnected. Then he goes into a school that's disconnected. So we can't control the neighborhood, but we can control the environments in the school. Yeah. So I think to me, I do think it's a systematic way to control a group of people. It's like when I was in my last point, I was on work in a prison, and I noticed one thing when I was in there and got to talking to some of the inmates in there. Let me rephrase. Yeah, I was doing work in the prison. I wasn't in prison. I was in the section. But we were talking. I noticed that all the colors, man, were like dull. There were no bright colors. You know, like it was like all these, like, man, you know, this.
Yeah, it kind of puts you in this state of like, you feel drained when you see, because like,
it's a great state. This is in the Browns and everything, and this is what somebody told me, and I never forgot it. He said, what you need to understand is colors stimulate you to think.
They do, yeah.
Dull colors, like Chris said, is designed to subdue, calm, relax. You know, so I think if you flip that over, that's what they're done to people in these communities. They kind of they trick them, man. They dull them. You know, they kind of help them go to sleep to the point where now it's about me.
Yeah, and like I'm not sure if you know I kind of missed this conversation. The point in terms of like the sense of community, you know, of course, yeah, there's the Black community, right? Of course, that's where we focus at, probably where we should start our focus at. But I don't think it's a sense of community like in the United States as a whole.
And that's why I purposely didn't say Black community, because I do, and even when I did the title, I purposely didn't say inner cities, although that's my passion, because I think it's done, you know, across the country. Yeah. I think it's a United States thing where you can take somebody who is dirt poor, you know, and they're fighting for something in the neighborhood. It's not really gonna make you want to.
I think part of it is like there's way too many things out there that kind of divide people, and they take a hard stance on, and they just kind of put the idea of community to the side. Like, for instance, like we could say this is probably extreme, but like in the South, like, it used to be this thing of taking pride of being from there, people. But then it's like, don't find out somebody's a Democrat, somebody's a Republican. And it's like, you know, I can't stand you. You can be my neighbor. Yeah. But it's like, but I think it's always it's something now where people just take this hard stance. And it's like, you know, they decide whether or not I can't deal with this person.
But I think the root of it is most people don't understand what the definition of community is. I do restore the circle. So one of the things I say is, do you feel a part of the community? You know, I've been with some teachers who like the kids would be trying to figure out, and I say, you mind sharing with them? They don't know. So if you don't know what something is, you know, how do you become a part of it? How do you duplicate? How do you help it grow and foster? They don't know. And then the other part of it is, I think it's on purpose that it's not being taught. That they're not teaching these kids that. When I grew up, and I'm going back, and people who went to Stokely School know exactly what I'm talking about. We were taught, it's from kindergarten to 6th grade, little 15-room class school, but we were taught about community. We were taught about sticking together. We were taught about having school pride. It was embedded in our education. So if you weren't getting it at home, you were getting it in school. And it was being modeled. It wasn't just being taught, it was being modeled by the teachers. We have white teachers, black teachers who really cared. So I think, you gotta, it all goes together. But again, and I'll say it again, if we can get anybody or a group of people divided, they're not going to accomplish
it. I was actually just thinking about that. I like this idea: it's divide and conquer, and we are being conquered. Like, taking advantage of.
But to your point, even in corporate America, you put men against women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they're so busy fighting, but the company making $1 million.
And that's kind of the whole idea of this point. It's like, it's something that divides us at every level. There's something. It's men versus women. It's white versus black. It's the rich versus the poor. It's like, like you from the city, you from the suburbs.
It's like community unions were born out of a sense of community. Unions came because you got a group of people who were tired and frustrated and wanted better wages, and they came together and decided that, you know what, we may be different in a lot of things, but we all got to eat.
To the side, right?
Yeah. But that's how you get rid of that, because if you destroy a sense of community, Kentucky is one of the poorest places in this country, man, and yet they continue to vote red for people against every social program they have, because that's what they attach themselves to. They, to your point, they're not looking at the big picture, saying my community is the whole United States of America. I was watching something today that was amazing. I never heard the term before. They were saying that we're approaching those healthcare deserts now. Like food deserts, where you have these communities where healthcare is just not available. And they say a lot of this come from, the pro-life thing. So I know people won't get upset when I say it. I am pro-life, but they were saying, like, when that legislation passed to overturn Roe versus Wade, it cut out so many things underneath that impacts women. That women can no longer get those services, even though they're not directly tied to abortion. They can no longer have those services now. So you got people who may have to go somewhere, and hide and sneak gone, because you got some states who pay people to tell them.
But I think again that goes to the point of where, even when it comes to what people kind of back and vote for or follow, they do it based off of one point, like with the bills or things that are passed. They don't look at the things that are underlying that get passed that also impact or affect you. Like they're able to say, all right, this is just about abortion, but it's really bigger than that.
But it's in the lack of community is in every aspect of life. I look at church. There should not be, in a biblical sense, a black church or a white church. There should not be, but it is. You can sit in the black church and hate white people. You can sit in the white church and be prejudiced, racist. It's not biblically based. So even church in its entirety is not a community. So this impacts every segment of life. So you can't sit back, and some people sit back and say, no, it does. And before you came in,
that has a deeper story. Some people use the religion to kind of cement their racism.
To justify their.
But then that's not community.
That's what I'm saying.
That's not the purpose. And see, that's what I say. If I can divide you, I destroy the sense of community. You can take the most talented football team, baseball team, basketball team, but if you put them against each other, they ain't winning nothing. Because now it's not about, I'm not going to block for you so you can get a touchdown. Because we both on offense. Hey, I'm not gonna sacrifice and get a buck so you can score to win the game. I gotta get a hit. So in basketball,
there are some teams that's willing to put that to the side, though. I think that's.
But that's what community. Yeah. But that's how we start out. That's what community is, willing to put those things aside, because you have a common goal, you have common characteristics. It's not about being clones. It's not about being the exact same. It's a willingness to become a part of a community. It's like a work culture.
You almost said it. You almost said it. It's what? We do not. I do not approve of that. I do not subscribe.
But I will go there too. Even in the woke culture, they can't all agree.
They can.
But this is why is because if you can get people outside a sense of community, you can't accomplish a lot, because you got a bunch of people singing the same song, but they sing it in and around different. They're all over the place singing it. And so therefore, if you got 10 people singing the same song and around means they all start at different time, you're not hearing one voice clearly.
Yeah.
You're trying to hear 10 people. So even though it's the same message, the method is so jacked up.
Because I even think about when we kind of talk about the idea of we want equality and a fair shake, and it's like we all want that, we all want that. But then I think people come, well, I want it because I'm black. I want it because I'm LGBTQ. I want it.
But see, we all don't want it. That's the problem. That's the problem. We don't really want equality. The equality and inclusion is for everybody.
Right.
We want preference. That's what we want.
We
want preference.
We need to call that out. I think that's something that needs to be talked about, because I think that also kind of hinders the idea of us fostering a community, because it's really not about, people may run on the idea of it, but it's really about preference. It's more so, how is this going to be beneficial to me? People like me.
Politicians have figured it out. They figure out, which demographic votes the most. Mm-hmm. What do I need to say to that demographic so I can win? Or they used to figure it out, and that's how they will win. Like Biden realized that, I'm getting all I can get out of black men. I'm getting all I can get out of Hispanics. So know what I'm gonna do? I gotta get the black female. I gotta get African American females. So that's what he turned his attention to, and he was able to get those great numbers. They put him over the top. But they put him over the top. So even in politics, they understand that. If I can galvanize a community, I can make all kinds of changes. The problem is some people don't know how, or they allow their personal preferences to get in the way.
And it's like, but I don't want to kind of make it a political discussion, but
but it ties into what we're
see
talking
that people
about.
placating, like just playing to, I guess, what they think are your core values and what you believe in. I think that's a big part of the problem a lot of times. It makes it hard to even come back and follow.
But if you don't have a sense of community,
what are you really about?
It's like I say I live in a neighborhood and it says 10 houses on the block. All of us are starving. All of us are struggling. All of us. And somebody comes along and says, you know what? I want this property. I gotta get this property, man. How can I get this property? Conquer and divide. I get one person to make him think either he's better or smarter or whatever than everybody else, and that starts it going. And so now, but sticking together, we can make our community work sticking together, because now we know you want to come in here. We can make demands. So if I do sell, I can sell a top dollar. I'm getting this money.
I think that's actually kind of a good example too. It really is.
So let me ask you this question. So when you think of community and like the destruction of it, do you think the phrase, minding your own business, do you think that attributed to it?
Oh, definitely.
Mind your own business.
Because I feel like a lot of these, now it's like I was saying to Dad earlier before you got here, like people really used to look out for each other, like Mr. Dana or Mr. Andre. Look out for it because it's a sense of community. But nowadays, I feel like that whole mind your business aspect has kind of destroyed that, where now people don't even want to help out because you're afraid of the response you're going to get.
Stop snitching, dude.
Stop.
In a way, it like kind of ties to that, because it's like this idea, like, if mind your own business, like I ain't see nothing, like I'm not going to say nothing.
Well, but stop snitching also, it worked because it took away the sense of community, because now it was about you. You need to stay in your lane. You need to mind your business. This is not your business, when in reality it is your business. Mm-hmm. You tearing up the neighborhood that gotta live.
And it was like holding people accountable. Yeah. It's like that whole idea of holding people accountable.
But if I can make it all about, if I can make people think it's all about them as individuals, I win. And stop snitching did. Why? It's snitching, you sold out. Why? Because you tell them, no, you not the fact that you tell them the criminal. Somebody breaking the law, killing somebody, or you snitching on your brother. No, you're not. But I think that's the reality of it all. But how do you do it? Again, you take the sense of community out instead of what's good for the community to what's good for you.
And it's actually kind of even funny to think about the idea of stop snitching and how we kind of glorified, not telling on somebody that really did something crazy. They don't even deserve to be there. Right, destroying the community. And then, you get respect for that.
Okay, what's your definition of community? This goes back to what we talked about earlier when we first started. Most people don't even know the definition of the word community. Yeah. And it's probably the amount of people who know is probably decreased with every generation.
Yeah.
that is no longer about community, man. It's about me. How does this impact me? How can I benefit from this? I don't care if the other 9 houses don't make it out. I'm gonna make it.
And again, kind of going with this idea of like, you know, making sure that people kind of monitor their own business thing. I think it kind of took away that ability for others to hold people accountable, you know, because like you can't see something and say something, and then like now people they kind of turning on you for that. Like before, you would get support. Like if something was going wrong, like we could come together, me and you, there, and like man, Devin, boom, we get hold of account, and it's nothing to it. But now, like if we didn't know each other, Devin could snap. Devin could be like, you don't know me. Like it was just like, yeah, don't say nothing to me. Like it used to be also, I feel like a mutual level of respect. But that's disappeared. It's a lot.
Let's look at
a lot. It's going on.
What has happened throughout society because it used to be protected. You know, if you saw something in corporate America, so first we turned around, so now they labeled a whistleblower, which in itself is not a great term. That you want to be known as a whistleblower when you do the right thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody that's willing to step up and tell the truth. Oh, you're a whistleblower. Really?
And then you're not even really protected.
No.
You know, you're not anonymous. Yo, it's like, hey, Chris Bender blew a whistle. He told on y'all. You know, so
he lives right.
Yeah. So I think it's not just stop snitching in someone, but even the name is just different, but it's across the board. You know, the cops. You know, you hear cops say it's a code. You know, we can't tell another cop, regardless if we did something wrong or not. We can't tell because that's a code. Stupid code.
And then even for that, I think bigger picture, there's these like sub communities, a larger community, and I think you know, it's like which one is more important to you? People get to decide and choose, and I think at the end of the day, you know, we're in this United States of America. That's like our one community that we all have in common.
But not anymore, though.
You would think.
Not anymore. Just look at January 6th. Look how many people agree with January 6th. You know, I mean, it's not millions of people, but there's still people out there who believe it. They know, who still think it's not about the United States. Even though we're the minority, it's about us.
Isn't that kind of frightening, though? Like, wasn't there a point in time where at least like we could be like I'm thinking about the dream team, you know, USA winning. We could all come together for that. Now sports, we can't even do that now.
Well, sports. That's the one thing I gotta say. Sports. I don't know. Like when the Eagles, everybody, you know, I know everybody down there ain't loving each other, but when the Eagles win, they do come together for a day or for that reason, and then the next week they go right back to where they were before.
But even from a global standpoint, like the USA, like they started hating on the USA men's team just because like, how can you call yourself world champs, regardless?
Because
why are you calling your fellow countryman out in public like this?
Because again, what's your sense of community? If it's about you, then you do that. It's about me and my personal feelings. And now I feel this way. I now have a platform to share this. I'm not thinking about the ramifications. I'm not thinking about the hurt or damage I do. Like, dude definitely is not thinking about his endorsements. You know, because I'm pretty sure there's more basketball fans than track fans.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm pretty sure basketball fans spend a lot more money
than track fans
on paraphernalia. Basketball, because the track fans spend on the clothes they wear. But I have a platform now. I'm gonna say what I feel. Yeah. Forget about the damage it does. You know, I mean, but that's what you do. If you can control, if you can destroy a community, you know, Chris, you take away the voice, you take away the power. Yeah. And now all I gotta do is I gotta find the pockets within the community who can just generate enough people to make it seem like it's the community. Mm. You know, how many times they go to neighborhood, they'll get the worst person in the neighborhood, and that's that person represents the neighborhood.
Yeah, that happens pretty often, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, always have a body.
Yeah.
Always in a tank top. It's like
you know, I've been in jail 5 times. But I think but it has to be taught. It has to be taught and passed down to generation. I think you have to get back to that. You know, schools have to start developing community. Schools have to start talking about how schools are community. Schools have to start teaching these kids about having a sense of pride.
I mean, that's a whole other issue in pride itself when you're talking about schools, because they're not even on the same page.
But that's where it starts at, because most of these kids are getting their education from outside the house.
Are fractured.
Well, I agree. But look at the district. Like, somebody watching this going to disagree. And when I hear somebody say we should have year-round school, And I'm thinking to myself, we can't even keep kids in school
That's great.
in June and in August because it's too hot. And we think keeping them in year-round school is going to keep, because that's my personal preference. I think, but if you look at it holistically, if you look at it from a holistic point of view, those kids who don't go to school, what's the difference? They don't go to
I
school.
was just sitting here thinking about that. Like,
So I hear what you're saying, that to some kids you may get, but it's still an issue. But if we can't keep school open all day long in August, at the end of August and at the beginning of June, how you gonna do it all summer? Now it goes to say, but in a real sense of community, we'll be thinking of other ways to solve the problem. Pay our teachers more money, invest in our buildings, fix the buildings.
What happens to after school programs and stuff in the community? Like, I was thinking about the police athletic league, like Powell. Like, man, that used to be a thing. Like, it made you kind of know the officers that were in your area. Got to meet people, got to travel. Like, I remember playing baseball, and that was just a good time. Like, being able to.
And it's funny because you built a relationship, and then years later we hook up with her again.
Yeah,
in basketball. Yeah, and all three of y'all. But I think I don't know my opinion about what happened with Powell was again. I think the sense of community. I know because it's funny because when I was growing up, Powell was a pillar in the community. Rec Centers had Powell because I played Powell baseball. You had it, and then it just changed, man. One, it changed because people who didn't play baseball didn't support Powell. Forget the fact that the kids
even still, what about like the basketball and all, and the other things that they could do that people actually had an interest in? Like, I just feel like Powell fell apart completely.
Yeah, but
and it was like, man,
why is that? Because the lack of support.
From who?
From the communities. If people would have gotten an uproar when Powell started to decline, something would have been done about it. But everybody was quiet. You allow it to happen because you don't see the personal value in it. So you allow it to go.
Because it's just you just have it for so long, and people just assume it's something that's going to be there, and then when they take it, it's like, I didn't know they were going to take it.
Like the Boys and Girls Club.
But stuff like that happens all the time.
Yeah, but quiet as kept, they still there. I mean, they're not as glamorous as they were before, but they still there.
Salvation Army still out there.
But I think what happens is people. This is where the sense of community comes together. If there's a Powell, say we had a Powell, we had 200 families that attended a Powell. And when the stuff in the Powell started declining, those 200 families, if half those families would say something, start to speak out, it would be a fight. But they're declining and closing and whatever's happening to them because nobody's fighting to keep.
But I'm even thinking beyond though. Like, think about just like the YMCA, like how I kind of said that. You can clearly see the difference in the YMCA and other communities,
but they were supported
in the inner city.
But they were supported by communities. The YMCA's in the city. The YMCA's in the suburbs, people go. They swim. They take in classes. They do all this stuff. Their families will go. Families will show up at the YMCA, and don't try to close it down. But in the city, nobody watching because they're trying to close down the Y. Nobody's complaining because now the backboards are like peach baskets from back in so and so. Nobody's complaining because the pool's declining, in the pool. They don't, because why? Because the community doesn't get behind it. If everybody in the community got behind it and said, you know what? Perfect example. When they were closing pools a couple of years ago, a lot of Black communities, African American communities, they moaned and groaned, but it was no real uproar. But in some of them other communities, they got out there picking it, they did it, and a lot of them were able to save their pool. Same thing with libraries.
I think that some of it is, people don't know what to do. All they're going to do is complain. And they're waiting for somebody else to come in and guide them in. Right.
But I think we got to stop saying that.
It's true.
Come on.
No, come on. In this day and age, if you can sit and complain in the barbershop.
Like, it's people who legit will complain about not knowing things or not saying, they have the information right there in their hand. We know that.
But I'm not saying it's in their hand.
Waiting. People are sheep. They waiting for somebody to come in and lead them in.
Like, here's
this is the plan.
But that's my point. In a strong sense of community, you're talking, you're getting together. Yeah, you may want somebody to lead. I get it. Everybody feels they can't get off front, but you're doing something. You're not just. I think for most people, they just do nothing. I granted there's probably some people who don't know what to do, but there's a lot of people who just don't care because they feel like it doesn't directly impact me. So it doesn't directly impact me. I don't have kids and go swim down there, or I can put my kids in the car and take them to the beach. You know, because I have the wherewithal to take my kids outside the neighborhood to do certain
I mean,
things.
how many
So
people
I'm not.
actually can do that? Like
A lot of people, there's a lot of people in the hood with cars. I don't see.
I'm not saying they ain't got cars. I'm just saying, like, in terms of like, yeah, we're gonna park the car, we're gonna go there.
Man, you know how many kids in my program go to Atlantic City, go to Wildwood? This is more than you think. I'm not saying that it doesn't have to be everybody. It just has to be enough to detract from the voice in the neighborhood. It doesn't have to be everybody. But if you get, if I go back to that block with 10 houses, if 3 of those houses have the wherewithal to leave and not worry about the service, that's three voices is not going to say anything. Now, if you take those 3 voices don't say anything, you come up with maybe 2 more, like you said, who don't know what to do. Well, that's 50%. Then you throw in 2 who don't know how to do it properly because they cussing and screaming and howling and threatening. So I'm saying, you know, when you start taking those and adding up those categories with a group of people, you know, that's voices that disappear, that matter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm just thinking in the grand scheme of things. Like, you know, we talk about how there's things that are lacking in our education system and community. So it's just like, I think that attributes to when we say that people don't know. I think even that's the thing where people are kind of, that's another intentional probably thing where it's like we remain uneducated, and then it's like you don't have that wherewithal or thought to be like, all right, I can change this in my community. Even if you can't go to AC or Wildwood, like they just thinking they can pick up and go. They're not thinking like, let me make the most of what's already around me.
But that's the perfect example. If you look at Fairmont Park, and you look at the pigmentation of the people who use the perfect Park, and it's free, you know, and it's changing. But a couple of years ago, the ethnicity of people who lived in close proximity to Fairmont Park weren't Caucasian, but yet still, who you see running around there, who you see, I'm not saying it's bad, who you see taking advantage of it, running around the drive, or who you see out there with their kids and babies and don't think it wasn't us. We didn't take advantage of it. When you go down, how many people who my pet peeve who don't even know there's an art museum steps called the Rocky Steps? And they was living in Philadelphia their lives. They haven't been taking advantage of it. We talked about before when they had the free, pay as you will, you can go free on Wednesdays. I didn't see a lot of us down there.
Nope. Definitely went down there, and they moved it to Friday. Even
I didn't see. So I'm saying, if you look at, and that was the whole Parkway Franklin Institute, when the police used to be before they moved it, but all those things down there. So I'm thinking, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but that's what happens when you don't take advantage of things. You allow other people to come in and take advantage of it.
So I got a question for you, because you mentioned a reference kind of having schools be part of kind of building and fostering community, but doesn't it also start at home? Like, we gotta kind of have it there.
But at what point do you say we know it's not happening at home and we put it in place somewhere, or do we just keep saying?
The reason why I'm saying that is because even with the school's not even on the same page. I just seen a story today where this not today, well, a couple days ago, this woman is like suing the school because they started like indoctrinating her daughter and making her think that she was a boy. And it's like this idea, since the community is different in so many places.
But it starts with
one saying let it be happening at the school. No, that's like
it doesn't.
The school is not even the safest place.
It doesn't have to be. You're not going to get anything to do it. So just if every individual school, you start there, and like I just mentioned, I know Conwell was very good at establishing a community. You know, without making you indoctrinate you to something outside of what you chose. You know, because in the true sense of community, you accept people for who they are. I'm not forcing you to be a Christian. I'm not forcing you to be a Muslim. I'm not forcing you. You know, that's not a true sense of community. It's a cult. So and it's not happening at home because a lot of parents don't know what community is. So what I meant from schools, I mean, in a perfect world, the district would adopt it. But to your point, everybody is going to be different. But if you had certain, like Pennell, I'm in Pennell now, and I see the difference versus some other schools that I've been in. You know, whether it's Conwell, and I keep saying Conwell because Conwell is down in the heart of all that stuff, the opiate and all that crazy stuff going on, and they've established a real sense of community down there. You know, those kids feel safe in the school. You know, when they're inside the school, it's almost like they don't even realize what's happening outside the school. You know, so you can do it. but one, you got to have strong leadership, and whatever your sense of community is needs to be clearly defined. You should not be trying to convince somebody
But I think,
you, in a sense of community, you allow people to discover who they are.
but I think that's the thing. It's like I'm not saying that it's impossible or improbable. It's just that maybe this idea of sense of community is so different for people right now that it's like hard to like think about, all right, how can we get on one accord and making sure like this is the type of community that we want to raise or have portrayed of.
It's going to be different for every. That's why I said you want to hear we started talking about that. Community is different everywhere. There's work communities, there are home communities, there's school communities. Community is different, and I think the great thing about communities is it is going to be diverse. There's some is forced not to be diverse because that's just who lives around here.
Mhm.
But in the real sense of community, it's not about black, purple, orange, green, religion, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. We all live in the same proximity. We all work together.
Mhm.
So we need to find some common cause, some common characteristics. We can function together, so we can make sure that none of us is being taken advantage of, that none of us will be disenfranchised. That none of us are being abused or being, systematically attacked. That's a true sense of community.
Yeah.
And I think so it is going to be different. And just like no matter what you do, you're always going to get somebody that's going to corrupt it because that's just people involved. And when every human being's involved, you always get somebody that's going to corrupt it.
I thought we were cooking.
I know. Like, I mean, I think we still got to sound.
Yeah, but since I know we never fully got your answer, I asked that earlier in the show. When you think of community, like what comes to mind for you?
It's a great question.
And like if you have any examples, like I brought up, Mr. Dana and Andre and all of them. Like,
when I think of or hear community, I think I kind of referenced or hinted on this a little bit tonight. It's like so many different layers to it. Like, your community, the neighborhood that you live in, your neighbors. I do think about the community, like being part of the Black community, people that look like they have a shared, similar experience. And even kind of thinking, just even beyond that, growing up, like I used to think, I'm a basketball player. I was part of that community. I do writing stuff, part of the arts and writing community. So it's like, I don't know, different factions in which I feel like I'm a part of multiple communities, but at the end of the day, I think the one thing, is that family is another community for me. Like that's probably the number one thing that we was just kind of raised on, is just kind of looking out for your own, taking care of your own. Like that's the first sense of community that, I feel like I believe in. But again, can still be part of other communities, and that be just as important to me too.
Do you think people are able to bring forth certain aspects of other communities to their respective communities?
What do you mean?
So, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. Say, like, what other community? You said like basketball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like basketball. Like, are you able to take some aspects, like, the leadership aspect of basketball or something like that? And can you implement that in other?
I think, I for real feel like that is probably one of the benefits of kind of being able to grow up the way we did, which is being part of so many different communities. It exposed us to so many different parts of life, gave us different experiences, which, we feel comfortable in a lot of different situations and areas just based off of kind of the experiences and communities that we've been a part of. So I think that's a good idea for people to actually kind of take bits and pieces of different communities and try to take the best of it and apply it to yourself, and how you can kind of improve upon that. And even kind of thinking about that and saying that, it makes me think about how sometimes we kind of self-segregate ourselves based off of what we think applies to one community versus what applies to another community. So I think that's a good question to ask. It's like, what parts of other communities do you take and apply to your own? I think everybody should do that, but I don't think that's something that we all look into.
I don't think people realize how similar we could be, like community wise. Because like you said, people get in their own way or different aspects like that. And I think that would be dope to bring certain aspects into our community that we could definitely use, like definitely a respect factor. That's one thing I noticed in like the Asian community.
Yeah, like the hierarchy.
Yeah, like there's always a respect thing. You're not gonna see the Asian disrespect another Asian in public,
Or their parents or something like that. Yeah.
So in terms of that, I think that's something that we could, get back to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Like I definitely feel like, and maybe kind of disassociating some of the labels with it, saying like, all right, this is a white thing, this is a black thing. You can only do this if you're of this community or culture. I think that's something that we need to be mindful of. And again, to your point, like if we see something positive happen in another community, we should just be able to take that and apply that to our own. Like, Dan, what are your thoughts on that?
But the thing goes back to, you got to teach people what it means to be a part of a community. We were talking about that before you got here. I think most people have no idea what that means to be a part of the community. Even though, we're talking about it tonight, but as I told you, I'll ask in class. So I ask kids, high school kids, and I've asked, and some of the teachers been in the room, like, do you feel like you're part of the school community? Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? So even when I say that, people still look at me like, okay, and teachers struggle with explaining it. So if you're being led by somebody who has no idea what sense of community is, how can you ever know what sense of community is?
Right.
So that's the scary thing about it. And it's funny because Gary's on here. We talk about this, man. We've lost our sense, but now since we narrowed down the scope to us as African American people, we've lost our sense of community. We lost where you if somebody like my dad, if we knew somebody down the street didn't have food before we ate, take this pot down the street. Before we eat, take this. I had a guy who used to come to my house who we weren't best friends, but he knew when it was dinner time, so he would knock on my door because he knew my dad was going to invite him and eat.
Birdman.
So he just knew, and he was a guy that was, his family didn't have much. He was outside. Devin made a comment about when Mr. Day used to whistle, it was time to come home.
Whistle, yeah.
When I was going up with the street lights, but dude never had to go in because nobody was looking out for him. So he always wanted you to stay late or do this, or he would come over and try to stay late going to school week because he didn't have anything else to do. So that was a sense of community. Now you got people we got siblings, man. You got, not looking out for siblings. This is crazy. Who don't even care anymore. So I think that has changed drastically, but it goes back to what's the definition. And I think holding people accountable. I know it's not happening at home. It should be happening at home, but school should be held accountable. They ain't got a problem taking your tax dollars. They don't have a problem, doing some other stuff. So why not have a system set up where you're teaching kids about community? And one of the schools, and I'm giving out another shout out, there's a young lady who works for help runs the program, and she wants to do a whole project on community, have the kids, kind of build houses and stuff and design a car and talk about the sense of community, her idea. So there's other people who still get it, who you got to teach these kids what it's like to be a community. Like you shouldn't just take trash and knock it off the table and knock it on the floor and not care about it because you don't have to clean it up, I was talking to somebody this morning, and he works in the place, and people bring dogs in, inside the building. And he got to come in and clean up crap because people allow their dogs to poop on the floor inside the building now, and they just leave. That's because you don't care. I don't care about the guy that got to clean this up. So that's because no sense of community. And these are the people who did that. I'm not talking people who have a little bit frustrating. So they have a little bit of cheddar. Yeah. So because we, as a society, we don't think community. Society is what's in it for me. How can I, forget the another 9 houses on the block? I'm gonna get mine, and I don't care about everybody else's. So that's the issue we deal with, and it's been an age-old problem. It's just growing now because of selfishness that's taking place. Where people always, man, I'm gonna look out for me, look out for number one. Hey, I'm gonna do me, and people think it's cute. People think it's a great saying. Look, how many relationships are struggling because one person in a relationship, is I'm gonna do me. You know, I crack a joke all the time, and maybe it's not funny, but people laugh when I say it. You know, I talk to some people, and they're selfish. You know, and they say, "Yeah, man," you know, and I say, "Yeah, you know, you and your spouse got one thing in common." And they say, "What's that?" Y'all both love you.
I love me.
Y'all both love you. You ain't mentioned doing it one time in this conversation. Yeah, it's about as long as I get this, that's a problem. That's a problem with both y'all madly in love with you. That's an issue.
That's actually funny.
But I laugh too. They always think it's funny. But that's a problem though. But now take that. How do you raising kids the same way? So how do you teach your kid a sense of community when you don't get a sense of community in your house? When it's all about you. It's not about anything else that happens in this house.
Yeah, it honestly, honest opinion. I find it hard to see it kind of ever getting back to
Here we go.
where it was.
Man, I'm gonna get you a shirt that says naysayer. Naysayer.
I find it hard to believe.
You're your mama's boy.
We talked about specifically in the inner city, but do you think there's a real sense of community even like out here nowadays?
What do you mean?
Out here, like where?
The shelters, the burbs.
Stop telling people.
Do I laugh? Do I laugh? Do I laugh? Do I laugh now or do I laugh later?
It's gone.
Man, I think it's worse when you get outside the city because when you got the city, color becomes more of an issue. You know, and I don't want to say at least like it's any less, but in the city they're not disliking you because you're black.
You're black.
Yeah, everybody black. So I mean, when you get out here, race becomes more of an issue. When you get out here, religion becomes more of an issue. You know, there's just different stigmas and issues that you deal with when you move out to the suburb. When you get out here, finances come into the because you know, like when we came out here in '98, you know, everybody thought I hit the lottery. Either I hit the lottery, I was selling drugs. You know, what you do was in the first two questions people asked: where you live and what you do. You know, the assumption was that we lived in them gardens. You know, it's like even running after school programs. There's times when I got to tell people who don't look like me, you know, I got a master's degree. You know, because they talk to you like you just got a high school diploma. You know, because you run after school program, like you don't understand. You like, in other words, you're not smart enough to comprehend what I'm telling you. So again, you know, I think if you go back to a sense of community, one of the key ingredients is you got to respect each other, man. I got to say, Chris, so what, you're Republican, but I'm going to respect you.
And I think that's the big thing. It's a lack of respect, a lack of.
But husbands and wives got to respect, but that's what it starts.
There's no willingness for people to actually listen and like listen with empathy, you know, and just be like, all right, I hear and understand. Even though I don't agree, that's okay.
We were talking about
happy medium.
We were talking on the call tonight with the guys, and I said it. You know, there's sometimes, man. The topic was at some point you have to realize it was I have to be enough. You can't be everything for everybody.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was talking about, when you find somebody, you got to find a partner, an accountability partner. But the problem with most of us is the minute you tell me something wrong, instead of me being empathetic, I got to top the story. Yeah, but check this out. You know, I was married twice and it didn't work out. You know, yeah. So I got robbed 8 times. We have that mentality that I got to come with a better story and not just listen to what you're saying. And again, in a sense of community, I do care what you say.
Right.
I do care about what happens to you. You know, and if it's about me, I don't care. So because it's all about me. And relationships, I think that contributes exactly to relationships. Why you see what you see in a lot of relationships, because people don't stop to think. You know, like, yo, this is about us, not just me. You know, if I'm not perfect, the relationship is never going to be perfect. You know, or if I think I'm perfect, the relationship is never going to be perfect. You know, so I think you that's why it's if you see it, you know, just disintegrating because you know it's not being passed down in the house. It's not being passed down. My father made sure I understood the sense of community. I made sure you understood the sense of community. You know, we're making sure the kids understand the sense of community. But if you're not doing it, the world is so selfish now, and Gary just talked about the world is so selfish now that it's growing, man. It's spreading like wildfire, and that's the popular thing. That is the popular thing now. You know, even in relationships, you know, if you're in I say it all the time, if you're in a relationship and it's me and I all the time, that's a problem. That's a problem. Or if somebody's constantly talking about what you do wrong, that's a problem.
I don't do nothing wrong ever. That's
But
right.
see, if you have a sense of community, and I say this all the time, because you have a sense of community, you look at how, for instance, and I'd say this all the time, if me and your mom not getting along, I always look at what could I have done different.
Introspective.
Maybe I responded wrong. Maybe I didn't have to respond at all. Maybe I should have waited to respond. In the sense of community, you have that as opposed to now we more enemies. We just ain't getting along. I'm pointing everything you did wrong because nothing ever gets resolved like that. So you see kids growing up with that mentality. They don't have a sense of community. And I see the difference because when I'm in these schools and you get that established in your after school program, they're different kids.
Yeah.
They're laughing, they're joking, they're acting like kids, they're having a good time. They run up, they want to give you a hug, they like to be around you. So they hunger for it, but they just don't know what it is. And it's not, and to your point, in some schools it's not being taught because, in some schools, hey, we have labels, and labels is the thing that I think divide communities the most. And what I mean by labels is you're in the smart class, you're in the slow class. They don't call it that, but everybody knows how to label it. And so you're already forming cliques. Because people in the slow class ain't hanging with people in the smart class. You're an athlete. So you're not hanging out with the nerds, so to speak. So it's starting. So but I'm saying
that's what I'm saying. But then it's almost these sub communities that people kind of get.
But that's how you destroy communities, by having all those sub communities. Because if I take a community of 4,000 people who are like-minded and working together, and then I divide it into four groups of 1,000 people. If they're not like-minded, they don't have the same power. They don't have the same strength in their voice. And they're more susceptible for somebody coming in.
But that goes back to, I think, the original point that was said in the beginning of all this is that, it almost seems intentional.
It is. No, almost. It is intentional.
Allegedly.
I'll agree with you. But I told you.
But no, it's just because divide and conquer. You can't necessarily come together on anything. You're susceptible to be taken over by anything.
It's division and conquer, and it's also ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance in the way it's stupid. I know somebody saying we call them stupid. Ignorance in the fact that you're just uninformed. You don't know. And instead of trying to figure out what's going on, you just piling on with what you hear that sounds good. So when somebody gets on TV and say, for instance, people, perfect another example. Man, if I hit the lottery, what I'm gonna do is not hit the lottery. I'm gonna do this. Man, you hit the lottery, you don't give anybody anything. You don't. You say
they say it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do all this.
It sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get something to my sister, my brother, and then they
when we used to live on East Burn Avenue.
I'm gonna just take it.
And y'all young, you remember we used to live on East Burn Avenue. And I used to say this to your mom all the time. There was an African American guy who owned a store in the corner. And that's where everybody went. So about this year after we lived there, because we didn't stay there long, maybe 2 years, an Asian store opened up across the street. Everybody started going to the Asian store. But they were stealing from the black store. So the black guy had to hire a security guard, had to raise his price a little bit. So they got mad about raising the price. But that's a sense of community. Yeah, but I'm just saying, that's how, if you got a sense of community, first of all, you ain't robbing from nobody.
Just rob them. That's what this story is. Why you just go across the street?
No, what I'm saying is, if you got a sense of community, then you don't drive our businesses out.
Right.
You don't drop them out.
I think that's actually part of this story as well. Is just the lack of support that we have for each other.
Just what he's talking about, they did that in Chicago. That's why they're getting rid of a Walmart there.
What?
So it kept getting looted by a lot of people from the inner city that live there. Now they want to take everything out because they lost millions and
that's happening in a lot of places.
And now they want to complain like, this is like a horrible thing. Yeah, it's like you got people literally on social media drinking things bought in the store.
Okay, but let's go back to the sense of community. I say this all the time. You got 80-year-old people that live in your community who don't drive, who need to go to the supermarket in the neighborhood. But you got some stupid 17, 18, 19, 20, wherever you're robbing the store to drive it out the neighborhood. That's a lack of but that happens so many times.
Nobody's going to talk about that.
But that happens so many times.
What about the elderly people?
And then the politicians who've been witnessing this whole thing will come in. Well, there's no business. No, you didn't protect the business in the neighborhood. I'm telling you to keep your store open. They robbing you, risking your life, taking stuff. We were in a Wawa out here on 611. And I told your mom, I said, that's how you know, it doesn't matter where you are. And this guy comes in. No, I see him outside. So, me, I'm a hood person. So I'm watching him out the corner of my eye, and he looking at me. He's looking kind of funny. So I'm looking, I'm like, okay. I didn't come to why they get into a fight. I came here to get some. So I got your mom, and love your mom to death, but she don't pay attention to stuff like that. So I said, go in the store. So he comes in the store and he looks around, walks all the way around the store. So I'm watching him. And
I'm out.
It's about young sisters who work in the store. So he was dressed kind of bummy. So he wasn't gonna rob him joint, but I could tell he was up to no good. So he looks around, and I guess he surmises a bunch of young sisters working in the store. So he goes to get a cup, gets the juice, filled up, and he's drinking it. So the girl's watching him. He's drinking. Then he's walking around the store putting stuff in his pocket. Taking his time. Oh, but check this out. So this lady's watching him. He goes to walk out. She holds the door for him. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if I was a cop, I'm locking both y'all up.
I mean, but you're not supposed to. They tell you not to.
No, but you don't hold the door. The lady had nothing to do with you.
That is crazy.
You watch him steal it, and you think that's cool. You hold the door for him.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
She shouldn't have did that. But you're not supposed to chase.
No, they didn't know. It wasn't, and I applaud because I could tell he was restrained.
I mean, baby,
the way he was going,
get out of here. She thought it was crazy.
Like, she was smiling, laughing. The way she,
like, you don't want to upset a man like that.
The way he was going, I could tell, and he was like teasing these girls because I could tell they were agonized. They wanted to say something, and they just, how you see them, and they were like, and most people like me in disbelief. So it's like, okay, you don't want to say something because you say something and you get the cops come, they get you.
But you know what's crazy? That's exactly why they built another Wild Wild right around the corner.
Yeah.
And a little
bit. But now I know. But now I know why. But now I know why. At first I'm thinking, wow, pretty cool. But and the lady watched him like we did. She opened the door for him like he did a great. So you cheering this dude on. And I'm not, I don't make a buck off a Wild Wild.
What was she supposed to do?
Just leave. You ain't gotta hold the door. Why you wouldn't encourage? The way because you look on her face, she knew what was going on. She watched him like we did.
He worked.
If I see you shopping, no, she was a person shopping like we were. She was a customer.
Oh yeah, I got.
I'm
not holding the door, but
yeah, I'm not saying interfere, but you hold the door like he did something great. It wasn't great. You may have a problem with Wild because you think it's a big corporation. Then don't shop.
But you know what's wild too is like people probably they look at it like that. Where they sticking it to the man.
But if they close, it impacts the people who can't drive, who only can get to that store. So that's what I'm saying. You're going somewhere. So, and that's the part people don't. It's like when I was working in Chester, and I shared this story with somebody today. When I was working in Chester, the KFC, you couldn't go on the KFC during the day, and they had bulletproof glass for the driver through the drive-through. The doors was locked all day long. That's a terrible way to do business. That is not fair for the community. But I'm saying, but the neighborhood drives that. So people who don't care about the community, you get so busy doing this stuff, and that's what you got to do. That's successful business. They just got a supermarket a couple of years ago.
Oh, where's the supermarket? I feel like not too far from here. Somebody like drove into it or something, and like
so
crazy.
Even the Enterprise,
it just destroyed.
Broad Negro, it has bulletproof glass. You got to get buzzed in. Yeah.
So the sense of community is why, and then it's no different when they loot. Like George Floyd, George Floyd gets killed, and they looting in downtown Philadelphia, breaking in business. Come on, man, that ain't no protest. Then you mad because they passed a curfew and say y'all can't be out after 18 years. Or they show those stories in California where this group of young kids run in there dressed in all black and they just snatch as much as they can snatch, and nobody's saying a word. Everybody kind of, now one of them guard don't do it, but if somebody hurt one of them kids, everybody gonna be marching and protesting.
Yeah.
But you going to driving somebody out of business because you stealing stuff they paid for.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny how people pick and choose again what we kind of want to stand for.
But in the real sense of community, we look out for each other. I don't care what your sexual preference is. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you are. In the real sense of community, we look out for each other, man. And I'm not saying you put your life at risk. I'm not saying it. But in the real sense of community, if I look up my window and somebody stealing me a key, I'm calling the cops. I ain't gonna go back and close my window, roll over, and go to sleep.
But not my house.
Yeah.
People. That's how people are. Yeah. And I think it starts at home. I know you say it's not necessarily there, but kind of. I feel like that's what was fostered with us first. Was like that sense of our idea when we started at home.
My father was huge on that. About. We'd be sitting
like whether that's our cousins, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, like just knowing the importance of that.
There was
having a support system.
We always had cousins or somebody living with us.
Right.
You know, if somebody needed a place to stay, they had a place to stay. So I just think, you know, and I know it's about time for us to wrap it up, but I just know, you know, things can't get better until we reestablish a sense of community. It can't, because as long as I keep people selfish, I got husband fighting against wife, you know, church going against church, you know, school going against school, you know, oh, we can't put this school around here because of this and because of this. We should be the only school that taking our dollars. Will be a better school. It'll be a better school, you know, and it just goes on and on until you get a sense of community. You're gonna have what we have, you know, because I don't care about anybody but myself. And that's what we're dealing with. And you see it in politics. When I'm listening to some of these politicians, some of the stuff they say, like, I don't want to, we talked about last week. To me, American politics is a joke.
Yeah.
It's like a bunch of kindergartners.
It's right now. Man. It's like they're not getting nothing done other than just arguing and putting on a show. It's a show.
Instead of looking out for the greater good, which they were putting off, they're looking out for themselves, and they few select friends.
But you want to actually kind of, to me, I just think they kind of highlight what the United States is actually kind of like. Their representation.
Oh, I agree.
They are a representation of what this country is like.
The sad part about it, I don't think they're a representation of the majority. I think they're a representation of the majority of people who have power, who have resources.
The decision makers.
Yeah. I think, and even the people like a step below the decision maker, the people who put these decision makers in place, who like when Trump says he's for small business, they think they got a 7-Eleven, he's talking about them. He ain't talking about you, small business. It's small business, billions of dollars. They think they fit into that category. So therefore, forget everybody else. He's looking out for me.
Yeah.
You know, my business booming. Forget that everybody around me is going bankrupt and stuff is crashing. So that's the issue. Whenever you get out of the sense of community, you get the selflessness versus selfishness. And, you know, people choose selfishness
every time.
So the problem with it is how you know, and they can get better. I'm not saying what you're saying, but how do you begin to change things if we keep doing the Three Stooges thing, saying it should happen at home, it should happen at school? No, schools have to do a better job because we know it's not happening.
Everybody has to play their part.
Yeah, but you can't. You know, if you can get the schools to do it, you can change it at home because generations are starting to be able to change it. You can't expect somebody who doesn't know how to do something to wake up one day and now know how to do it.
It's just funny talking about the schools because it's like that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, it is not. But what I'm saying is, you got to start. My philosophy is this. My philosophy is when I'm doing my parent mentoring, whatever, and I'll start with parent. If I can help this person change their concept to be a better father or be a better parent, now they can teach their kids so it becomes generational. I don't expect them to go back and just lay hands on their friends and all their friends. But no, you start generation mentoring. If I can help break the cycle of a family of guys who always went to jail or who don't value education, I can get one of these kids. Hopefully, or preferably, when they grow up, they'll marry somebody with the same mindset. It's generational. That's the only. You're not going to change houses now by going to all these houses because someone don't want to hear it.
Exactly.
So, but if you start with kids, you empower kids. They can start to change, and it's not going to happen overnight. But it can be a slow process. So now when I grow up, I can change my household. I can change, you know, my immediate surroundings. I can start to hang out with people who are like-minded. So now it's not just me, it's people who think like
I mean, that's what's probably where, again, that's a whole other conversation. Education, it's almost intentional that they don't want people to be educated because you can critically think and you can, you know, form ideas, have conversations, and come together as a community.
You think for yourself.
Yeah.
Well, the problem, again, it's funny because they used to say this all the time back, I guess around the 80s and 90s. They just say, you know, the most dangerous black man is an educated black man. The other side of the thing was, when you hide stuff from black man, how did it look? But that's still, they don't say those things, but that's still relevant today. And you know how to work. You do. When people think you dumb, they love you to death.
Yeah.
But the minute you show you can hang, or you can, and I gotta say it, black on black crime in corporate America is just as bad.
Black on black crime in corporate America.
Because it ain't a physical crime, but it's just as bad. Yeah. That we don't have a sense of community. We like crabs in the barrel. Well, we think he is, you know. So I think but it has to start somewhere. And I think it starts if you start working with kids in school, and you're not gonna get all of them, but you can become generational. Yeah. And sometimes kids do persuade their parents into doing something different. It's like when I do Toy Store. I don't do Toy Store in the cool trial because I expect somebody to drive in and give me, allocates who give me awards. I do it because, hey, I'm hoping I can teach people to give back to the community. I'm hoping people can say, you know what, he don't even live around here no more. but he comes back every year and he does this. Don't charge anybody, and hopefully they pay it forward. And not so they can't say everybody's selfish, everybody looks out for them. No, everybody doesn't. The same thing I do Thanksgiving baskets. They can't say nobody gives, or nobody does anything for free, because we do. We do.
Yeah.
The same reason why I got you guys out there when you were young, had you done things so you could see that.
Yeah. We need more good people being and doing loud things.
But you also got to do it and not do it for attention.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
And you also got to do it. And this is my last point.
We need to give it
shut
attention
down.
though, again, because I think that's what deters people sometimes.
Yeah, you can give
It needs to be authentic though, because there are some people who just do it for show.
Yeah, look what I'm doing.
Right.
But I also think you got to be purposeful about taking somebody along on a ride with you.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be purposeful about duplicating yourself, man.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So anyway, we at the point now. We've been on here an hour. I know we started a little late. So.
Yeah. Another great episode above average black man. I feel like our topics have just been getting better and better each week. It was good to be here with you guys and be able to chat it up. Looking forward to next week's topic.
Like, follow, subscribe, share, comment, interact with us.
Let me get you a T-shirt that says.
That's all. That's it. Just a T-shirt that say that.
Reverend Bloomberg today.
Yeah, that's funny. You came in with the Mansfield Peace Act.
Yeah, I know, man. I should see now when I was my Rochester stuff, you get upset. I bring up my latest
It's just a
stuff.
color.
Welcome to another episode as we close down Above Average Black Men. My brother Derek, Gary, man, appreciate you guys and everybody for listening. Say it one more time.
Like, follow, subscribe, share, comment.
See you guys next week. Hey, if you want to be a guest, we're looking for guests. Hit us up.